And finally, a very important question as we go into Inauguration weekend. What will Trump do on day one? So this is a really important question. And it's a question that I've been reading about in the news, but also working my personal network amongst people within the administration, at least as it relates to the things that I care about. So I've been working on DEI for the last 2 years, as many of you know. And from what I am hearing in the news and elsewhere, there is a strong likelihood that Trump will issue an executive order abolishing DEI in the entire federal government on day one. And look, I think that this is a really important thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And now, given that we've built such momentum over 2 years, so that now even tech companies that had previously supported DEI are now winding it down, it's really a no-brainer. And so let's be very optimistic for just a moment and ask the question then, what else might he do? Because the first day in office is really where the president lays down his marker on how ambitious he wants to be. I think there's going to be a big announcement on immigration, some significant restrictions that send a signal to people, don't come over the southern border illegally. You'll be stopped and sent back. I think there's going to be a series of executive orders on the question of the administrative state. So how can the president tame and get under control the sprawling left-wing bureaucracy? And I think there will be other actions that we may not anticipate now that could have significant effects. So I'm sure that come next week, come January 20th, all of us will be carefully watching what's happening. And I will actually be in Washington, D.C. I'll be attending the Passage Press Gala, the Coronation Ball, they're calling it, on the 19th, and then I will be watching the inauguration ceremonies with a number of friends and colleagues and partners in Washington, D.C. And so it's going to be a really important day. And I think that I'm in particular interested to hear Trump's second inaugural address. And it's something of a kind of hobby of mine to read the inaugural addresses from various American presidents. And of course, there's some of my favorites with Washington and then Jefferson. There's some very interesting, if kind of ominous addresses, from FDR and LBJ, and then back to some great ones like Richard Nixon's. And so Trump, of course, had the famous American Carnage address, which I think will hold up quite well over time. But this second inaugural address, I think, is going to lay down a marker. I can't wait to hear it. And finally, let's get to the comments section. I published a piece this week about Mark Zuckerberg's decision to scrap DEI at Meta, and the comments were almost all skeptical. And one reader wrote, "I don't trust Zuckerberg or his seemingly sudden change of heart. Ask yourself if the guy who spent $400 million of his own money to get Biden elected would be doing this if Kamala had won the election. It's clear to me that the answer is no. So he's blowing with the political winds and will likely shift again if those winds change." Well, yes, I agree with this. But I think it's important to go further than that, to actually take the next step in the analysis. And I think that analysis will bring you to the opposite conclusion. Look, we should not trust Mark Zuckerberg's change of heart. I don't think it was a change of heart at all. I think it was a change of calculation. Would he have done so if Kamala Harris had won? Probably not. But the fact is that President Trump won, and that Mark Zuckerberg then felt like the system of incentives had shifted enough that it either allowed him or forced him to take a new tack. He wasn't the first. Elon Musk was the first. He's not going to be the last. Smaller companies will follow. But in a sense, it's actually not important at all what Mark Zuckerberg really believes. We should take Mark Zuckerberg not as a bold truth teller or trendsetter or thought leader, courageously making a decision to abolish DEI. He doesn't deserve any kind of credit like that. We should take him as a barometer, as a weather vane, telling us which way, as you say, which way the winds are blowing. Well, now it appears that we've crossed that tipping point where when we said abolish DEI 2 years ago, we were dismissed as right-wing, fringe figures. Now those arguments have gained enough purchase where Mark Zuckerberg feels like it's in his interest to follow suit. And so this to me is the sign of enormous success. We've built what was a small argument 2 years ago to what is now a dominant argument within the highest stratum of America's elite. And yes, he might shift again if the winds change. But that really just says that we have to keep working hard to make sure that we have the wind at our back and we're making continual progress on this fight. And what I think is really the other important part of this analysis is that most people are not independent thinkers. Most people follow others. And so if you can get other people in positions of high influence to agree with you, this is something I've done both publicly and also privately in Silicon Valley in particular, you can then change attitudes and perceptions down the scale. That's the significance of Mark Zuckerberg's decision. You could love him, you could hate him, you can feel indifferent. But what's really important is why he made the decision and how we could keep those dynamics moving forward.